There are plenty of visual novels out there, though horror-themed ones are something I don't always run into. But every single one that I do have been great, from The House in Fata Morgana to Corpse Factory. The game we're talking about today was recommended to me by someone on a stream a long time ago, and I'm finally ready to talk about it. Here is my review of The Letter, a horror visual novel for the Nintendo Switch. The Letter is about Isabel, a young realtor selling a presumably haunted mansion in the town she lives in. After finding a bloody chain letter and having a terrifying paranormal encounter in the mansion, people start winding up dead, throwing Isabel, her friends, and those purchasing the mansion in an adventure for survival. Now, this story is both okay and really good at the same time. The horror aspect is heavily inspired from the likes of Ju-On, otherwise known as The Grudge. Many story beats are very similar, and the ghost of the letter looks very similar to the design of Kyaku, all the way down to that unsettling, creepy croaking noise. Now, I said the story is okay and really good at the same time because of the different aspects to it. The horror stuff is alright. The encounters with the ghost are really cool, but a lot of the backstory and stuff you get later in the game could have been done a lot better. But to be honest, this game's really about the characters. You spend a ton of time with each of the 7 protagonists in their own chapters, from the ramen-loving realtor newbie Isabel to the obscenely rich couple Hana and Luke. Every character has a unique personality and all of their backstories are very different. And in this manner, it's very good. I did feel like they spent a lot more time away from the horror elements and on the characters, especially some of the interactions between Isabel and Ashton. But from a character making perspective, there is a lot of depth to everyone. And that story is elevated further with a well done English dub. Fans of the abridging community will recognize a lot of this cast. Previous and existing members of Team 4-Star, Takahata 101, Shuto Renmaro, Antfish, HBI2K, and others all show up in this game. When it comes to gameplay, this is a visual novel with an extensive branch system, dialogue choices, and a lot of different variations to events and outcomes. As you trek through it, you'll navigate through story scenes and get occasional event QTEs and dialogue choices. Now, as far as this version, The Letter was originally a mobile game that was ported to consoles and PC. There's no content difference, so the console version isn't free to play. On mobile, you get Chapter 1 for free and have to pay for everything else. Here, you pay a one-time fee and have the entire game. And just to clarify, because I noticed this pretty early, when you boot this version up, you see mobile version 2.0.2 right here on the screen, while the iOS app is currently on 2.3.3. But once again, no content difference. All of those newer mobile patches were for bug fixes and compatibility for new phones and tablets. Something that's kind of unnecessary for the Switch. But let's get back to the game. Main progression is like any other visual novel. Each chapter is focused around a character and has you navigating story scenes and being able to auto-advance text, skip forward, go into the backlog, save and load. Though, let's talk about how you move through those options. You have this little UI menu on the bottom right corner of the screen that has little sections for each feature you can do. The issue I have here is that you can't get rid of this UI. It's relatively small on that part of the screen, but it can't be transparent, it can't go away. It will always be there as you're navigating through the story scenes. And the weirdest part, the mobile version has a much smaller UI than the console and PC version. It just has a couple icons, one of which pulls up all of these options when you want to go into them. The console version should have had a trigger for that same menu with the start or select buttons. Anyways, during these story scenes, you have dialogue choices that can move the story in different directions, as well as affect relationships between characters, which will dictate whether certain story events will trigger. But there's a horror twist to all of this. The ghost shows up multiple times in each chapter, and in some of those areas you have to perform a quick time event minigame to try to survive the attack and move on with the story. There are difficulty options for these, as they can get pretty hard. You can also skip them to auto-complete and move on. But succeeding in dialogue choices and QTEs isn't always the most interesting part. If you get yourself on certain paths by selecting the quote-unquote wrong choices, your character will get caught by the ghost and die. But the story won't end there. It'll keep going, giving you the same overall plot, but with their death changing many events. Not only with them not being there, but how the other characters react to and cope with that loss. This is the key to going for this game's endings. You can kill or save every main character, getting to the end of the game with all of them alive, some of them, or none of them. I found it really interesting to not just save these characters, but see the alternate, what if this person died here variations. Plus, this is required for getting the true ending, as every time you get to a character death path, you unlock memory fragments needed for that ending. And all in all, I found the story much more impactful and just better when you don't have everyone survive. My first trek through was saving everybody, and it was good, but I had so many more shocked, emotional, and heartbroken reactions when I started getting those memory fragments, seeing the deaths, and aftermath. Speaking of death and horror, is this game scary? Most of it is just spending time with the characters, but there are some pretty great jump scares. Plus, the imagery and noise being so close to Kayako from The Grudge is done so well that a few nights of me playing this game almost had me sleeping with one eye open. They really nailed the creepy factor. Now all this comes together to have a pretty beefy visual novel, especially for an indie title. Your first trek through the letter will take you about 20 hours, and many hours on top of that if you want to go back to get the true ending. Next up is presentation, which is fantastic. All of the game's art is crisp with its 3D-esque look and light animations. While it's not nearly as animated as a game like Song of Memories, the animations we do have look great, especially in the more jump-scary ghost encounters. I don't have anything bad to say about performance. I've heard that some versions of the game are known to crash, but I've encountered zero issues on the Switch. So let's go into battery life. The letter gives the original and light models a battery range of about 4 to 5 hours. The V2 gets 6.5 to 7 hours, and the OLED gets 6 to 8. In conclusion, the letter is a very unique visual novel with its animation and inspiration from the likes of The Grudge and The Ring. Now on the downside, the story can get a bit long-winded with some of the character interactions, and the UI permanently being on the screen during story scenes is a bit of an annoyance. But if you can deal with the UI being on screen like that, it's a pretty darn good visual novel with a lot of options for horror fans that like what ifs and seeing how a story unfolds when different characters don't make it. Reviews to Go rates The Letter, a horror visual novel for the Nintendo Switch, a 9 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.